Hi everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social, where there's two of us, but we'll get through it. The mighty two of us. So, Mark, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome, Sam.
Yeah, so we should have some fun with this one, guys. We're going to be talking about watch terms we use and misuse. This is purely subjective, of course, and our opinion. But as always, let us know. Keep the participation going in the comments so that it feels like there's a panel of 6 instead of 2. Mark, would you like to do a wristwatch check? Or
Well,
two?
as there's only two of us, I have more than one watch. Seiko Todd never needs that excuse. So the last few days have been big watch week. So here is the Omega Seamaster Chronograph GMT, 44.25 millimeters by 17, I think.
Beautiful.
And it weighs over 200 grams, so not a watch for the faint-hearted or the watch media. And before that, I was wearing my Christopher Ward Trident Pro 600-meter SH21, which I've had now for about 10 years.
Wow.
And again, it's another bit of a chunk, but you can see how their design has changed.
Yeah.
Some ways for the better, some ways for not. But,
yeah. What was it? Was there some recent? There's a recent post or something they did where they were like, "Oh, our iconic teardrop hand," and I was like, oh, I don't know if it was. I don't know whether it was.
You can see it here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what made me think of it. Yeah.
Whether it's a water drop or if they thought about it and wanted to add some class, it's very similar to the hour hand on Big Ben.
Yeah. Okay.
In terms of, I don't think that was intentional, but what ages that watch a little bit is the indices, in that they're very long and narrow compared to what they do now.
Somebody's typing in this thing. Big Ben's the bell and not the clock.
Big Ben is, well, that's absolutely true. And then you just have to ask them what the chapel is. Yeah. And it's actually just to be, if anybody wants to play Pedant's Corner,
we're playing.
I am here.
we had so many comments in the last one when I was talking about Homage watches, which we'll definitely talk about again because people had some fun with that in the comments. I'm now doing like a comment minority reports where I'm trying to like predict comments in live streams. I actually find that hilarious where people are often like reviews that I've done years ago. I replied back to somebody this week like, oh, you know what I would have done? I would have done this. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that was 6 years ago. I made this. It's a little, it's not live. Like I can't change it in real time. Oh yeah. Like, we're getting some good ones coming through. Anyway, what I'm wearing is a watch that it was from a small independent brand, and I've been looking forward to this watch for ever since they teased it. And I was lucky enough to interview Huey, who is their, I guess it's like operations officer or something for RZE or RZE watches. And so they sent me one of the UTD 8000s, which is a tough digital watch, titanium sapphire. This is so cool. I had to interview them because other than Autodromo, I can't think of another small independent brand that's done a digital watch recently. There isn't any, is there, other than Autodromo?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. So we go into like how they made the watch, because this is coming in on this fabric strap, which is nothing to write home about, but it's coming in at $210, and I think for $375, which is the one I would go for, they've got one of their titanium bracelets on. Now I've seen these RZE titanium bracelets in the past, and they are fantastic. So I don't know if they're going to let me keep this one, but if they let me keep it, I'll be ordering the titanium for it, and it comes in a really cool metal toolbox as well, which I actually have these metal toolboxes already, these Japanese steel ones, but they actually ship it in a toolbox, which is really cool.
Better than the cheap plastic pelican fakes.
Yes. Yeah.
The AliExpress. You know, where did you get this watch? Oh, it's got that pelican fake. It must be AliExpress.
Well, you know who else is guilty of that is, or who else uses the cheaper Pelican cases is Citizen, because I've had Citizen send me watches all the time, and I've had a few of those that have turned up and they've been cracked, or the hinges have been cracked. Whereas you'll never crack a proper Pelican case, will you? You could throw it out of a helicopter and it'll still survive.
Oh, we had a project at work where we had to ship fully charged gas cylinders. And then you used to get the special reinforced Pelican cases to ship. It was just like...
So did that look like a Mission Impossible thing when you opened it up and it had the cutouts with the gas?
Yeah, and it had 4 little lab cylinders. 1 litre lab cylinders. Just, yeah.
Oh, wow. It's like a Mission Impossible thing, that.
Really the paperwork to get that to happen the first time. Paperwork took... because you've got to have somebody specially trained to ship them. So we had to have a member of staff DOT trained to ship hazardous gases like that. Interesting stuff.
To go on a tangent here, when I used to work for an Apple reseller, my first outside of university, and it was that long ago that one of the guys I worked with, he told me that a couple of years previous he delivered 256 megabytes of RAM to the MOD, and they had to have it handcuffed in a briefcase because then 250. This must have been late 90s. That was like, I don't know, like $5,000. It was like extremely expensive RAM, probably more than 5,000 at the time. But yeah, 256 megabytes of RAM, and he had to have it handcuffed to him in a briefcase and like an armed escort. Anyway, right. Hello everyone, as you're coming in now. So yeah, guys, as I mentioned before, keep your comments coming in the post. Help us out here. Help Mark and I out. So the subject this week is watch terms we use and misuse. I am definitely gonna say Homage watches, but I will leave that later on. So stay tuned. But Mark, I had a couple here. But do you want to kick us off with one of yours, and then I'll do one of mine? What's your term that we use a lot that you like, or one that we think is misused?
This goes back to the argument in the comments with that person, for want of a better term, that ended up getting banned, accusing us of not liking horology. So yeah. Horology, that's a term that gets misused. What do you think it means, Sam?
I thought horology is the appreciation of time, or the appreciation of time measurement.
It actually has 2. Like I said, Captain Pedant strikes again. The primary definition is the science of measuring time.
Yeah, okay.
But there's a second one that says relates to making of instruments to tell the time. Okay. Watchmaking, for want of a better term. Being a scientist by training, I tend to go with the first one. And if you look at the history of watchmaking, it's been a journey to make time telling more precise.
Yeah.
Omega with the constellations, they have the 8 stars. That's the 8 competitions they won for precision in time telling. But it tends to be used now, and especially with the addition of the word horology, high horology, it's decorating the dial, which relates to making a watch, but that's not all it means. That shouldn't be the meaning it has. That's my contention.
Yeah. So people are using horology as like the general term for watches or clocks and watches. So they're saying, I love horology, but really horology is the scientific measurement of time, or the pursuit of making things more accurate.
I fully understand watchmaking as part of horology. I don't, as a scientist, I really get behind the idea of better and better precision. Think of Abraham Louis Breguet with the tourbillon. Although he wasn't necessarily the sole inventor, they are doing something very creative and very difficult at the time to make telling the time more precise. That's a good use for horology. Just saying it's anything to do with watches, I think is lazy.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. So Wristful Ignorance is saying, oh, you just check the RZE website and who are aligned screws. So I've interviewed the guy. They do look like they are aligned screws, but they're actually not.
Are they bolts?
Well, they're not bolts. They do fasten the case. They're actually fastening pins,
okay,
but they don't screw in. So yeah, wait for my interview, which will be live probably tomorrow. It was 40 minutes, and I'm going to try. It was 40 minutes of really good stuff, but I'm trying to move it down a little bit. Okay, so next at Brassic Times says his pet peeve is affordable.
Good one.
It is a good one, that, isn't it? Because we talked about this last week, didn't we? About affordable versus value versus, and that is right, because really, affordable is such a nebulous term, isn't it? It's like it doesn't. What does it really mean? And it means different things to different people, doesn't it? Like affordable to, a billionaire, Richard Mille might be affordable, but.
And that's one, I think it comes up later. Attainable. I prefer the term attainable. Who said that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Here you go.
I agree. Attainable should be used more often. Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of saying, I'm definitely guilty of saying affordable. I'm sure in my reviews and stuff. That's a hard thing with the reviews, is trying to make sure that you're not using a lot of hyperbole in terms over and over again. But yeah, affordable is an interesting one.
But I think affordable you could put into categories, couldn't you? So you've got the sub 100, sub 500, sub 1000, all of which you could argue are both affordable and attainable.
Yeah.
After that, it's much more subjective and relates to your wife and your bank account.
Yeah. Okay, so my next one then, terms that are used and misused, I'm going to go with compressor watch or compressor, because now compressor seems to be in modern terms. If you say compressor, somebody's just going to assume it's any watch with two crowns. So either with an inner rotating, usually with an inner rotating bezel, countdown bezel instead of the bezel being on the outside, usually two crowns, usually a dive watch. But obviously it doesn't, not all watches that look like compressor watches are actually compressor watches. So compressor was essentially a method of making a case, wasn't it? Where
the
case, yes. Where the case itself would, they were originally invented for where case tolerances couldn't be guaranteed, where machining wasn't that accurate, that simply the case itself wouldn't prevent the sealing of the case itself. The screwing in of the back wouldn't necessarily guarantee the water resistance or help with the water resistance. So they put various different things like spring-loaded mechanisms in the back that would push the case. Or
careful, Captain Pedant strikes again.
Go on. No. I had like a good run of 30 seconds there.
History of waterproof watches. There's some great articles about the history of waterproof watches. From the idea of having two cases. A case within a case. Super compressor, the compressor and the super compressor were part of that. And really the competition was from the late 50s into the early 60s for the best way of making a waterproof watch. Because you didn't really see them except as special military. Panerai got their start in World War II as an example. But for EPSA, they had two generations of the compressor, which is where the case compresses as it gets deeper.
Yeah.
And then if you put a spring in it, that's a super compressor. Christopher Ward got their history right. They had that. So
I don't think I knew that, actually, that's what made it a super compressor was the
spring, because they had the compressor, then the compressor 2, and then the super compressor. And the spring helps separate the case. It helps the case decompress. And helps keep the force around the whole case equivalent.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So that is and somebody's asked shame. Somebody, sorry, it says it's a shame true compressors aren't more prevalent. Yeah, so Christopher Ward has one, and there is another.
Theirs is a super compressor, and there's another company that makes a super compressor, but I don't think anybody makes a compressor case.
Yeah, I think they're called Sherpa.
Oh, damn it! Sorry, Mark, you're quite right.
What?
All Sunday social roads lead to CW.
Yes, they do. They do. Sherpa compressor watch. Let's have a look. And I only know this because here we go. I only know this because I got into an interesting conversation with this guy about how he wanted to come on and talk about the compressor watch, which I was fine about. But then when he first released it, they were like $7,000 or something. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable like promoting it. So he'll say that his Ultra Dive is a true compressor watch. Yeah. Compressor case, back construction originally named. Yeah. So this is the other one I think is a compressor.
I thought there was another super compressor aside from the CW, but I can't remember who. It may not be made anymore.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Okay, cool. Let's have a look here. Next, so we've got one for the audience. Sean says, my pet peeve is the term professional, just marketing as we sit at our desk with 1,000-meter divers. So yeah, Breitling use this, don't they? The obviously Omega use professional, Citizen use professional in their marketing.
Or then you have Pro.
Yeah.
So this is a Trident Pro because it's 600 meters. It's just like,
Yeah, because the term professional is essentially, I know it as anything you do where you get paid for it. Essentially, isn't that like the actual literal term of it? Like you are a professional. If you're like a programmer and you get paid for it, you're a professional programmer. Like,
I've seen it defined as 51% of your income.
Okay, yeah, I'll go with that. So yeah, so to have a watch being professional, you would have to have. What would you have to have? 51% of the users used it for diving or used it for a professional term. It is for sure a marketing one, isn't it? But they do, I think, certainly Citizen and especially Breitling, they don't just those watches that they label sort of professional they do have some like serious chops to them, don't they? Like ISO certifications, or like Breitling has a thermocompensated. Their professional one, of course, that has the emergency that has the beacon in it, which could be used by a professional pilot. But yeah, essentially, yeah, if a watch is professional, then the Apple Watch. I've seen more Apple Watches on the wrist of. Although the other day I did see a pilot wearing a G-Shock, which I was quite pleased to see. But yeah, I suppose all G-Shocks are professional as well, aren't they? Because they're used by law enforcement and military.
I mean, as a marketing term, it's part of the good, better, best, isn't it? Mm. So the highest specification, you slap the word professional on to further justify the price.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a look here. Okay, so that was my next one. Did you have another one?
My next one was one I think I know we've talked about before, and you might want to bring up later. Homage.
Yes.
Go on, Sam. You rant first.
No. Oh, yeah. We could obviously talk about it later, but yeah, I think this is the most. And I'm not saying anybody in the comments. I think Homage is the most widely misused, and I think on purpose as well, because to say something is just like a copy, it doesn't sound cool, does it? It's like, oh, homage, it's a French word, but homage is obviously the literal term is to honor or to pay honor to something. I think if you were going to use it in a sentence, so to homage something is to pay respects to it, to honor it. So it is used in the terms of, it's used a lot incorrectly to say, oh, this is a homage of of this. So, for example, let me just show you like a couple of examples of what I mean. So, first off, like I would say that this San Martin is not a homage of
It's a copy.
Tudor. It's a copy. It doesn't exist to pay respects to a Tudor Black Bay GMT. It exists to look exactly like it, but a cheaper version of it. There's nothing about that is respecting the Tudor design. They've done everything they possibly can to directly copy the design and do it for cheaper. And so that to me is not a homage watch. Also, I would say another one of the favorites here, Steinhardt. I would say that is not a homage of a Yachtmaster Rose Gold. That is a copy of one. It is aimed to look exactly like one from a distance. Easily could be confused for one on somebody's wrist if you were looking more than 2 meters away. It doesn't exist. Steinhardt doesn't pay honor to Rolex. They are copying them, making cheaper versions of them, and that's their business model is to do that. So let's talk about something that, and I'm going to mention Christopher Ward again, and I could mention a few others, but to pay a homage to me. Well, for a start, I mean this watch that I'm wearing now, this is a homage of a early G-Shock, one of the early MRG G-Shocks, because what they've done is they've taken that they've taken inspiration from that G-Shock design. They haven't copied it. There's no G-Shock that looks exactly like this, but they've taken the design. They've taken the toughness that G-Shock was famous for. They've added that in there. They are paying respects to vintage G-Shocks without looking like one. And of course, I've got to mention, of course, like the Sealander. This is an actual homage to a Rolex GMT. To the Rolex Explorer 2. Sorry. So it's taking design cues. The bezel is actually the only thing that is even slightly like the Rolex, but because of the silhouette and because they've used that bezel, they are paying respects to a Rolex design. They're not copying it. The case is a different shape. The oyster bracelets, obviously, they're different. The hands are different. The indices are different. It's given a little subtle nod to that romance that the Explorer 2 had back in the day, and even now. But it's not copied. It's not trying to fool anyone into fooling the casual observer into thinking that is a Rolex by any means. So that is a homage watch. I would say this is a homage watch as well. So that is what the distinction is for me. And I think it's incorrectly used to say that these copy brands are at all paying any kind of honor, any kind of homage to a Rolex or anything. I mean, Pagani designs, they even rip off like the affordable Seiko watches. They're not paying respect to those Seiko watches. So
absolutely.
Oh, Mark, your view.
Well, I kind of agree. I tend to use the term true homage and then copy because people then have to think about what I'm saying when I say homage, because then I'm saying copy and I'm not using them the same. Yeah. Looking at the comments, I did like Mark's comment about buying a watch and then finding it 30% cheaper on Jomashop, because the grey market has got to be fascinating about now.
Oh yeah, the grey market.
Yeah,
they kind of got iced out, but they actually might be needed to save the watch industry, mightn't they? Because this idea that they are going to ice out the grey market and only create limited stock and just up the price on stuff, I think is probably going to ultimately backfire, isn't it? But
well, that's what irritates me about buying watches today, price. Yes. I'm getting priced out.
I am actually. I know this isn't technically a term, although pricing, I suppose, is a term. But I'm actually having a real. I haven't got a what. I would like to buy that Tag Aqua Racer that I think is still quite good, but I've got the money for it, but I just don't want to pull the trigger yet. Not because I think that is particularly expensive, but I'm just getting disillusioned with the way the watch industry is going at the moment, that they are I was having this conversation actually with Huey from. So, guys, this week I'm going to upload not a review of this because Ben at Ben's Watch Club did a fantastic review of this. So check his review out. I've actually interviewed Huey, who's one of the guys who runs Razor. So you'll find out all about it. But I was actually talking to him about this, about the watch industry and how like prices have gone up, and a lot of those stories, I think, where a lot of us have fond memories of Rolexes or other watches because we knew people that had one. Like, our dad might have had a Rolex, or, somebody or a boss at work might have had a Rolex. Whereas you're just not going to get that anymore, are you? Because most people can't just afford to buy a Rolex or give one away as a retirement gift anymore, can they? Because they got so expensive. So you're going to lose a whole generation of these like cool stories where you meet people that have got interesting stories about the watches. Now the interesting story is going to be, well, I could afford it.
And you've also got the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
So because you'll see executives wearing Apple Watches, not wearing a mechanical watch. They'll wear an Apple Watch and nobody thinks anything of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing as well, isn't it? Because you wonder. I know Bruce Willis, was it a couple of years ago? It was a while ago. It's probably 10 years ago. He was didn't he take Apple to court because he was saying that essentially when he passes away, which hopefully won't be too soon, although I know he's suffering from aphasia, isn't he, at the moment? But he was saying that his Apple Music collection essentially didn't own it. He only was buying the license to it. So actually, when he goes, can he transfer the license to his kids? And I think Apple was like, no, they're like non-transferable licenses. Whereas obviously a record collection or a CD collection, you could pass on. So that's what's the shame about these, the Apple Watch, isn't it? That it is a utility that's easily to be disposed of. So you're not going to get that, oh, I'm going to pass this Apple Watch down to kids or whatever.
Aside from the fact it won't be functional either.
Yeah.
It's not repair. Yeah. I don't think they're repairable, and the software moves on. So 4 or 5 years time, don't know what the time frame would be, but it'll be a mysterious black screen.
Yeah, that is exactly what they are, aren't they? They are a utility. And I know a lot of the early Apple Watches, they can't be updated now, and they're 5 years old or something.
But then they are both affordable and attainable. Whereas, you might feel a bit miffed if your $100,000 watch didn't work in 10 years' time. But if it's $200, that's a lot of money for many, I know. But for $200 or whatever an Apple Watch costs, you buy another one.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're going to lose even the bands kind of self-disintegrate and stuff. My wife's been through several bands, or for several of the bands on hers, and even those, and like the Hermes make a band that's, I don't know, probably hundreds of dollars that you never, that end up, it's just going to end up being in the bin, isn't it? You can't really, unless you keep just buying the Apple Watch and then assuming that in like a couple of years Apple doesn't change the mechanism they've already changed the size so that those early straps won't fit the newer ones, but say they change that mechanism, which actually I think is one of the best strap changing mechanisms on any watch, but that might go. But yeah, you're kind of losing that romance, aren't you, of you're kind of losing those romantic stories, because I think now a lot of watches have got very expensive. Like I knew people that had Speed Masters because I knew somebody had one as a graduation gift and they still wore it. They're from like 70s, or like you would start to see like engineers would have Speed Masters.
Sort of even in the time that I've been properly into watches, the Speedmaster Professional, the Moon watch, has gone from 3,500 or 4,000 to 8, whatever is it now?
Yeah, 8,300 for the Sapphire.
Eek. So but that's, I think, what the Speedmaster Professional did in particular is set the price for a luxury chronograph.
Yeah.
Breitling's and 9. Everyone saw that suddenly Omega could charge $8,000 for a Speedmaster, and everybody ran up to that price point.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? The only one I've ever regretted not buying the chronograph was when the Fortis, it was called the Cosmonautis at the time, wasn't it? But now they've changed the name, so it's not associated with Roscosmos, I'm assuming. But they you could pick those up for like $2,000 or something, and now they're like $6,000. Which I don't fault. I mean, they did bring that company back from the brink, so it might be because it was so cheap that they nearly, unfortunately, went under. But thankfully, they're back. So let's have a look. Let's get back. We'll go back on topic for a bit. So Bressic Time says, another misused term are depth rating. One brand's 30 meters mean you can just about wash your hands. For another is actually means 30 meters. Yeah. So I had, speaking of the Speedmaster, I had one for 10 years. I wore it swimming, I wore it on holiday, I wore it in the sea, and that only had 30 meters depth rating. And you would think, wow, 30 meters is quite a depth. Most people can't swim 30 meters comfortably downwards, I don't think. So, and I don't think I think the Apple Watch that's actually pitched as a sports thing, I don't think that has like a massive depth rating on it.
But as our esteemed colleague Pete McConville would always point out, Omega are unusual in insisting that 30 meters is 30 meters. That's what they mean when they put 30 meters on it. Yeah. They don't mean, oh, we did an atmosphere test. They mean you can take this down to 30 meters.
Yeah.
That watch had a good video on this sort of thing when he's talking about how deep various divers can go. You know, he picks the free diver that did 200 something meters and then spent months in hospital with the bends. But most, and I'm not a diver, but how deep do you go without having to get serious decompression time? Most fun or amateur divers aren't going much below 30 meters ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of homages, this watch, that watch, homage of Pete McConville's content when he was making it. Yes, I agree. Yeah, so it is misleading. I think a lot of YouTubers as well are guilty of this, aren't they? Like, oh, it's only got 30 meters, or it's only. Our friends over at Veya, Ryan and Reagan, they guarantee, they guarantee for 2 years, I think, their water rating of 100 meters. So if the crown's in and it gets any water ingress, they will replace it. So I think they're the only one I've ever seen that guarantees the water resistance, because most of them, the T's and C's, I think, are a bit loose, aren't they, around the actual water resistance of a watch.
What's Von Cruel saying?
Yeah, saying so it actually means the watch tolerates the pressure at that depth, but then you're not allowed to move the watch at that depth, otherwise the pressure increases on the yeah, I'm not sure about that.
But the other thing is that why would you sell a watch with any water resistance rating and put it on a leather strap?
Yes, yeah. So we've actually got a good comment here from, is it Samurai Conscious? Is it?
Yeah.
It says, I'm nervous for any crown that does not screw down. Is that misplaced worry? We need somebody from Christopher Ward on, because they love this one, don't they? Because which watch, I forget which watch it was, but they made a dive watch, didn't they, that didn't need a screw down crown, and people reacted that badly to it, I think, on the forums or whatever, that they ended up having to put a screw down crown to it. And Mike always uses that whenever I've interviewed him as a thing. He's like, it's 100 meters or 200 meters is fine with a
I forget which watch it was, but they had a push-pull crown that was 150 meters water resistance, and a year or two later it went to a screw-down crown, because people will just go, I don't trust the water rating. How can a push-pull crown go to 150 meters? And there's a magic word there. It's gaskets, and the second magic word is tolerance. So, and in fact, for a lot of applications, a push-pull crown is probably more reliable than a screw-down crown, because the chances of damaging your watch with a screw-down crown, particularly if it's hand-wound, is much, much higher than it would be with a push-pull. So,
or leaving it unscrewed.
And as Joker said, PRX is 100 meters and it's water, push-pull crown. So there's nothing wrong with a push-pull crown, at least down to 100 or 150 meters, providing that your watch is properly made.
Yeah.
You got 2 or 3 gaskets in there and the right engineering tolerances, and quite frankly, for modern watches, those tolerances aren't difficult to achieve if you're, if the money you're paying is worth it. So a proper watch from a proper watchmaker should have no trouble with 100 meters on a push pull.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to Robert Coleman says I when it says 200 divers 200 meters, I feel reassured. I think I do as well, actually. In fact, Citizen are redoing the dive watch, aren't they, with the depth gauge? They've got a limited edition, a new one that's coming out.
Didn't they have some incredible 40th anniversary?
Yeah, hopefully I can get hold of one of these for a review. I've already asked them if I can, because I got a little sneak peek of that when it was coming out. So let's have a look. Okay, so we just did Homage. Then I will do one. This isn't one that somebody's misused, but I still, for some reason, it gives me the ick, as the Gen Z will say, or the Gen Alphas will say. I still don't like the term timepiece, because it sounds like codpiece, and I know it is that. That is like the modern codpiece, isn't it? Is that? Oh,
your therapist is going to have fun with that, dude.
yeah, exactly. So I still don't like it, because maybe it's because I'm from the north of England that it sounds very pretentious as well. Like, oh, look, one has a timepiece, not instead of, oh, look at my watch. What has time is. So I don't use timepiece, even when I'm kind of correcting stuff or asking like the Chat GPT to tidy up the descriptions on these. If it puts timepiece in there, I go in and correct it to watch.
But then you also have, if you're going into a shop with a suitable level of class, every watch is a piece. Look at this lovely piece.
Oh, I know. And it is,
that's a wonderful piece.
It is the modern peacocking, isn't it? Oh, look at my piece. Like, it's just the carry on horology. The innuendos are endless.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh well, I see Thomas has been stirring the pot with horology.
Oh yeah. I've never really understood what is technically horology.
Expensive,
yeah.
Or somebody spent longer than was strictly speaking necessary scratching a piece of brass and calling it guilloché. You can take the snobbery out of it. It's a term that's pure. You want to talk about watch snobbery. Horology is definitely part of watch snobbery.
yeah. And this, I think, actually what keyed off this idea was I don't like the term watch snob, because I don't know who that's supposed to be for. I think people use watch snob as anyone who doesn't like a watch that they like, or anyone that they disagree with is suddenly a watch snob. But if you think of you would think of a watch snob being, if you didn't know, if you said this to somebody who wasn't in the watch community, they'd be like, oh, you mean that's the people that have like the really expensive watch collections? But we know many people who have very expensive watch collections, far more expensive than I would ever own. And they are like the nicest. They are the real appreciators of all watches. Like, I've never met somebody who has like an extremely expensive watch collection that doesn't also have like a G-Shock or like a cheeky Swatch or doesn't also appreciate affordable watches. I don't know anybody that's like extremely wealthy that would look down on somebody else's watch. Even at work, when I'm with customers and stuff that have nice watches and I ask them about it, if they're into watches, they're always intrigued about what your watch is. They aren't like, oh, well, this one's a Rolex. And I'm sure there are people like that, but I think within the watch community of people that appreciate watches, I have not come across many people. I mean, sure, Archie Luxury used to make that his like shtick, didn't he? The shitter thing. He used to make that his kind of shtick. But I don't think I've met anybody that is not doing it as a troll, basically. I like a genuine somebody I would say is a watch snob. And the other thing as well, just while I'm on this rant, most other than watch, say watch snob there was a watch snob. Like if you were called a beer snob or a wine snob, that would be a compliment, wouldn't you? You're like, oh, he's a bit of a wine snob. Him, I'll ask him which is the best wine. Whereas this is used, oh, it's a wine. Oh, it's a watch snob. Oh, he's looking down on what I like. So I think it's funny the way it's used in the watch community.
I've seen pockets of it, of what you would term, watch snobbery, but it might just be that I'm a peasant and don't appreciate the finer things in life. But if you go to something like Horology Forum, if it's in your city, there is an attitude there that only certain brands matter, and they have to be expensive with a long history, called AP, Vacheron. That definitely exists. But it's only in a very rarefied environment, I think.
But so I have this conversation with Michael, who's not in the chat. He's in Tampa. He's on holiday. He's in one of my watch groups. We always are good. I think there's like a reverse snobbery where it's people that are more snobbish about people that have nicer watches. That it's more like a projection thing, I would say, because I guess if you joined a classic car forum, if you joined a vintage car forum, but you turned up, like if I turned up with my Mini to a vintage, it's not a vintage Mini, it's a newer Mini, I would expect people to be like, why have you come to like a vintage car and just bought like a 2002 Toyota Corolla? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a certain, I guess when you go to places that and they are dedicated to a specialism of some sort, like I guess if you went to like a furry convention and you turned up with some mittens and a hat with cat ears on it, do you know what I mean? Like people will be like, "Come on, you're not even." We've got the full fox outfit here.
Or me going to a furry convention with a black sweater that's got white cat fur on it. I mean, all of my clothes have got cat fur on it. Does that count?
Like, this is real. Hey, this is real fur. Like,
this is real fur.
You know what I mean? It's like if you go to specific. I think in the watch community you don't encounter many watch snobs that'll just call you out like Watch Crunch is like real, everyone's like super friendly there. Like somebody posted like I think a Tommy Hilfiger watch the other day, and no, actually somebody might have said Tommy Hilfiger. It was something else, another watch. Sorry, Robert, it wasn't. I did mention Tommy Hilfiger because I spotted it there. It was like another watch, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's really cool," because it had like a great. People care about the story, I think, of the watch more than they care about the actual watch. Whereas if you go into specialist places like. I don't know why I mentioned furry convention. I've never even
because your therapist needs the money, Sam.
Or would we say, or something like an anime thing, and you went with all your Beano comics or something. Like, oh, I'm really into anime. Like, whatever. So I think if you go into like specialist places, then I think it's for people to be like, oh, okay, well you came to this specialist thing. I'm always winding Michael up, aren't I, when he's like, oh, I don't buy anything over $300. It's like, all right, that's cool, but like other people do buy it. Like, don't Anyway, cool. Okay, so here you go. So what's Eric saying? I think snobbery comes into play when you judge the person by the watch. If you judge the watch itself, that's a great point, isn't it? That is a really Great point. Yeah, yeah. So the gentleman who will remain nameless, who was calling us snobs last week, was because we were talking about the watch itself. We never talk about. I don't think I've ever talked, even when I've reviewed like Invictas, which I still think the Invicta Pro Divers. If you're getting into watch, if you know somebody that's getting into watches, buy them Invicta Pro Diver mechanical, best value, like best bang for your buck you can get. Although that goes against my Homage thing, I suppose. But yeah, I think if you're judging the watch like a review, you're not a snob. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a great point. But if you're judging the person, yeah, that's a great point. Very, very a good point. Well made. Okay, so whose go is it now? Oh, I mean, I did my joking one with timepiece. Where do you sit on watch dial versus watch face? So I think a lot of people who don't necessarily know about watches call it a watch face, which you could easily dismiss that as being like, oh, actually it's a dial, but also Rolex call it a face, don't they? I think on their configurator they call it a face, a watch face. So where do you sit on the I use dial, but where do you sit on the
I use dial, but I think face is an older term. So, has just the has the fashion for that word actually changed? To be honest, I don't care. I think it's unusual to hear watch face these days. It's a dial, but then we're semi-educated in watch lingo.
Yeah.
So we've come to be, much more used to people saying, "Oh, it's a sapphire dial. Or the dial is on a base of brass, and somebody scratched it a bit and called it Guilloché." Just to irritate the high horologists out there, Tom. come at me in the comments, Thomas.
Yeah,
but yeah, it doesn't make me it doesn't irritate me. I think it's these days. I think it's anachronistic.
Yeah,
more than anything else.
I think face is used a lot by people who. They might have a watch, or they might not really be into watches, but I hear that a lot with that. Oh, I like it because it's got like a blue face. But I think people that are actually more into watches, like we are, like collectors and stuff, I think dials probably a lot more common.
And I think Mark again says face is a throwback to clocks.
Yeah,
and it's probably still more common in clock world than watch world.
Yeah, isn't there a riddle like that? Isn't there where it's look at my face or something? I forget which the riddle is. To watch the old Batman. If anybody knows that riddle, put it in the chat.
Or as Samurai Conscious says, I hear watch face more in the context of downloadable smartwatch.
They do. They say faces, don't they? I've got on my Garmin. I think it says watch faces instead of dials. But I know Apple certainly use that faces, I think, as well. Yeah. Okay, so watch out. Okay, so what did you have? Did you have another one in your list?
Only because I don't like it as as a form of decoration on dials. Guilloché.
So let me say, I'll let you explain it. But what I understand Guilloché to be, however you say it, is that it's usually a radial pattern that might look like a child's spider graph. Was it called spirograph? But there's an actual. It looks that way, symmetrical pattern with a deep engraving, because there's an actual machine that is turned that then it pushes the engraver in and out, and it creates a different pattern based on the engraving mechanism. So I thought Guilloché was. Although I know you can get like stamp dials that look the same, and I've recently reviewed a Zelos watch that had a CNC Guilloché, which I presume was a laser that was doing the engraving. But I thought Guilloché was a machined pattern using a special machine to engrave it in like a deep engraved dial.
It's normally called I think it's a rose engine or a rose turning engine, and what you see, rose engine turn dial. Thank you. But the machine is a rose engine, and really it's a engraving tool or a cutting tool that follows a pattern, and it is quite often manually adjusted, and you see it as a mark of excellence, and it's difficult to do. It is a sign of craftsmanship, but it's not something that needs to be worshipped with the sycophancy it is these days.
Yeah.
So was it Voutilainen? Kari Voutilainen was famous for his hand-worked watch dials. You've got people like J.N. Shapiro, who are famous for their hand-worked dials, and really, it's a facet of materials are cheap and labour's expensive.
Yeah. Thanks, John. That is the rhyme. If you look at the numbers on my face, you won't find 13 any place. That was what I was thinking of. So I interviewed, and I've still. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever done on the channel. Was the one where I interviewed the engraver who engraves I think it was Robert Sheehan. Forget his name, sorry, but where he engraves the Rolex cases with this deep engraving, and he tried to do I think he maybe did a Kickstarter or something where he hand engraved the dials, like deep engraved the dials, but he could never. I mean, his engraving was absolutely fantastic, but could never get it quite off the ground. But he was like hand engraving those. Yeah, Pelage, Guilloché, and engine turned often get confused. Yeah, so you're saying that Guilloché can be, so as Michael A says here, there's a different types of Guilloché, stamped, machined, and hand. So I wouldn't think that stamped would be classed. I thought Guilloché was the engraving, but
it's one type of pattern.
Okay, so it's there you go. I learned something new again
because you
today.
Wouldn't. If you look at the Monceau that's currently going through Kickstarter, that's got that sand dune type pattern. I imagine that's stamped or molded. But then if you look at this is and you won't see it on this watch, but this has what is supposed to be guilloché, and it's lines of paint in a wave pattern. So, very cheap way of doing it. It's not actually guilloché. It's a wave dial.
So is guilloché just an engraved dial? Is that what we're saying, or is it the radial pattern? Or
it's a specific type of pattern on a dial. Yeah.
Okay. So like scroll work would be to like knife engraving or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to deep dive into guilloché today, so.
Well, actually, while we're talking about Monceau, if anybody's still interested, there's only 6 days left of Simon's campaign, so definitely check it out. I'll do a community post as well. He's like nearly at his target, and it was a high target, but he actually factored in what the entire production run would be. So definitely check that out. I'll leave a link in fact, I'll put it in the channel if anybody's interested. So this is Simon from Escapement 24, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. This is his first kind of funded or self-funded watch project. I think he has got an investor, but yeah, it's.
I think he's his target's 91,000. I think.
Yeah.
Well, it was 91,000 or approximately 100 subscribers.
Yes. Yeah, and he's up to 76 now. So if anybody's interested, definitely check it out. Put a link in the chat there. Okay, let's have a look at. Is anybody else? RJM, yeah, RJM makes. They have that rose turning machine, don't they? I think there's like a YouTube video, or maybe Teddy went there and saw the machine. Okay, I think. Well, let's talk about. This will be one that you probably do know a lot about, the titanium grade. I'm discussing it with this is grade 2, but it's coated, which RZE say that this is that it actually has the Vickers scratch resistance hardness coating of grade 5. But isn't it that first myth is that titanium isn't scratch resistance, is it, unless it's coated, and grade 5 is a mix that can be just highly polished, but it doesn't have any hardness benefits over grade 2. People get bent out of shape sort of about it.
I've always found it a little bit confusing looking at the different ways people rate hardness. In general, grade 5 titanium is the common aerospace grade of titanium. It is an alloy. It's only about 90% titanium, but it's the aerospace alloy because it's an aerospace alloy, there's a lot of it. And because there's a lot of it, it's cheap, relatively speaking. It does have different properties. It is, in theory, slightly harder than grade 2. It is difficult to machine, so you don't see complex case shapes unless you're going to really, really, really spend a lot of money doing so. Blancpain are a great example. They actually use grade 23 titanium, which is a more complex alloy, but they will machine it into very complex curves, but then they're $15,000 watches, so you hope so. Grade 2 is commercially pure titanium, which you'd think, oh, that should be easier to get than grade 5. But grade 5 is the commercial grade. It can be machined, but it's typically done into simpler shapes because it's expensive and slow.
Yeah, because I always thought, I mean, before I was into watches, and I didn't really, I mean, I had a titanium, MacBook back in the day, but I never really thought about titanium. I always thought that titanium was an alloy that was maybe an alloy with ceramic. I didn't realize that it was actually something.
Titanium's an element. I can't remember its atomic number, but titanium itself is an element.
Yeah.
Commercially pure titanium, such as grade 2, I think is 98.5% pure. Grade 5 is titanium, aluminium, and vanadium, I believe. That's about 94 or 95% titanium.
Okay, but it's done that way. Seiko use grade 5 because it can polish better, or it can take a polish.
They can all take a polish, but typically it will be slightly harder. But it's also, if anyone says they're using it for a specific property, they're not building the SR71 anymore. You use titanium because it's light. You use it because it's corrosion resistant. You use it because it's got a high melting point, which doesn't really matter for watches. But really, you use grade 5 because it's easier to get and cheaper.
Okay. Actually,
the cynic in me says that.
We're coming near the end here. We actually haven't talked about Zaratsu polishing, which was on your list.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we've got to do that one. Speaking
of
titanium,
do you know where the term comes from?
I have no idea. I thought, when I think of Zaratsu polishing, you think that if you didn't know much, but you knew a little bit, you would think it was a proprietary polishing process that Seiko made for Grand Seiko.
Bollocks.
That's what they're marketing. But you agree that that's what their marketing leads you to believe.
That's how the marketing comes across. Grand Seiko themselves are actually, if you dig a little bit, are surprisingly honest where the term comes from. It's a name of the company that made polishing machines.
Oh, is that right?
So if you're Western European, the company is German, and it's Sallaz, Salas.
Okay.
When you speak Japanese, the phonetic translation of that into Japanese is Zaratsu.
Okay, so if this was England, it was on a rotary watch, it would be chub polishing, because chub machines or whatever.
Yep. So again, Zaratsu is a Japanese bastardization of the original polishing machine name. It is the Japanese phonetic pronunciation of a company called Brothers Salas, Sallaz.
Yeah.
And it's not the machine itself; it's how they use it, how they orient the polishing pad, and how they orient the item to be polished on that pad compared to anything else. Anyone can do it. So just people tend to, it's whether you prefer that finish or not. And Grand Seiko, Citizen use it, I think.
Yeah, because
I think this thing is Zaratsu polished.
So is this what other companies would call like a mirror polish, or do they call it black polish?
Black polish is a specific type of polish whereby you can't it looks black under certain very specific angles.
So right, okay.
That's a very high-end type of polishing, but that's very hard to do.
Okay, and that's even more advanced than Zaratsu, obviously.
It's well, Zaratsu isn't actually advanced; it's just different.
So it is marketing to, because they do say Zaratsu polishing, don't they? And then they're like, oh, it has to go back to Grand Seiko because the artisans there are the only ones in the world that can restore it back.
If you have to have a level of skill. I very much doubt that you have to go back to Grand Seiko to find that level of skill, but it will be relatively rare.
Yeah.
But if you can get it on a $3,000 Citizen, it ain't that rare.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that was everything I had my list. We've hit around. Did you have any more on your list? I mean, we ended up with a banger there, as the kids would say. Those are actually polishing. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. Guys, thank you for being so active in the comments and keeping us going there. So really appreciate it. And yeah, keep the comments coming after the upload. If you want to, don't forget to check out Simon's Kickstarter. If you want to join the channel for exclusive content, then I've left the link at the top. I would really appreciate the support. Watch out this week for the interview with Huey at RZE for going over this great digital watch, which I think is one of the most exciting independent brands that I've reviewed this year, because I'm just a big geek when it comes to digital watches. Guys, really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social.
Have a great week, everyone.